Okay, you thought I was kidding. I wasn't. You thought this title was a joke? It's not. This study in Psych News Daily, right there, Psych News Daily, says new study finds not knowing how to flirt is the main reason behind, quote, involuntary singlehood, unquote. This came out Sunday, March 7th by Douglas Heingartner. That is a long last name. Douglas Heingartner. But that's let's talk about that for a moment because this just popped up in my email uh, where I get a list of topics being commented on Reddit, the social media website, right? Hey, welcome to Zenny62. And it reads, in fact, here's the photograph they use in the photograph, all right? I'm not making this up. See? There is the title. New study finds not knowing how to flirt is the main reason behind involuntary singlehood. And presumably there was this fellow hitting on this girl in the library. Okay? So, now you would say, what does this have to do with Andrew Cuomo? And I would say, everything. A new study published February 19th of this year in the journal Personality and Individual Differences has found that the main reason, the main reason, it says the main reason behind involuntary singlehood is not knowing how to flirt. Now, in the case of Andrew Cuomo, the allegations that are brought against him now by 5 women are saying that, well, essentially he didn't know how to flirt. Not so much that he was flirting in the workplace, and or how they interpreted it. The first one who came out, took his words and said he seemed like he might have been interested in having sex with her. Then the latest one claims that he put her, or encouraged her, I believe it was, to come to a hotel room and under false pretenses. And I'm typing this to make sure that I have the story, down and right. And so, and that his behavior, according to the Washington Post, was such that it created a hostile and toxic workplace culture for decades. Now, that's different than sexual harassment, okay? And they're all over him, just jumping all over him. And so, what I'm writing now is what these accusers have said just to set the tone for this discussion. And then they say about his sexual misconduct. And Lindsay Boland, who's said that she's been part of this culture of sexual harassment and bullying with his team, and she says that in Lindsay Boland's statement, she says that he created a culture within his administration where sexual harassment and bullying were so pervasive that it was not only condoned but it was expected. And she wrote this on an essay that was posted in Medium. And then she talked about his inappropriate behavior for women, his affirmation that he liked you, that he must be doing something right. He used intimidation to silence his critics. If you dare to speak up, you would face consequences. And she called her boss and informed her that the governor had a crush on her and that he began to call her as Lisa, which is a reference to Lisa Shields, his former girlfriend. And now I read this and I'm thinking, well, how come no one just said to him, hey, you know what? You shouldn't be treating me like that. Why didn't they stick up for themselves? And I hear this, well, I'm afraid of losing my job sort of thing. But really? I mean, if you are in New York government, don't you have enough connections to get another job? That just it seems a little interesting. And governor says that's not true. And then Charlotte Bennett said that this is the one that stepped forward first and talked about how she guessed that maybe he wanted her, and said that you know, stuff that if she was uncomfortable with it, she should have said, I'm not comfortable. But it's also him flirting on his part. Two examples of flirting gone awry, right? And then Anna Rush told the New York Times that she was confused, shocked, and embarrassed if he asked if he could kiss her, which when they met at a wedding reception in New York, which, yeah, you shouldn't have done that, unquestionably. Another example of flirting gone awry. And she said she turned her head away and just didn't have any words at that moment. Well, these folks are taking a picture of him rather than just saying, hey, governor, you shouldn't be doing that, right? Just have some stones. Then Karen Hinton says, who is one of Cuomo's top aides and actually is a PR person I'm acquainted with, because she represented Stephen Donziger, who is flirting with a lot of bad time because he structured a fraudulent argument that Chevron dumped oil. Chevron did nothing of the sort and wasn't even there. Just saying, okay? Small world. At any rate, she says that Cuomo started asking her personal questions and she was uncomfortable with the conversation. And this incident allegedly happened 21 years ago when Cuomo was a cabinet member. And so she says, Karen Hinton does, she stood up to leave. So as she stood up to leave, he walked across from his couch and embraced her intimately. It wasn't just a hug, it was an intimate embrace. She said she pulled away and he brought her back. She pulled away again, and then she said she needed to get some sleep, okay? And she said it was inappropriate. They were both married at the time. She said she worked for him. It was too much to make it so personal and intimate. And he says that it didn't happen. And then this is going on to become a really sad personality war, okay? And a really sad personality war. And so anyway, going back to the study, it says that the study that says that knowing how to flirt or not knowing how to flirt is the main reason behind involuntary singlehood. And I'm wondering, is that really the reason, or is it that we're afraid to flirt because of the number of instances where it may go wrong? Andrew Cuomo's example is an example of him thinking that his behavior is meaningless from his words, but apparently to some it wasn't, even though they didn't tell him so at the time. But is this the real reason why we don't flirt anymore? Because of the possibility that someone will be accused of something that they didn't intend? That this study doesn't mention that, but it's worth asking the question. It says, according to the study's author, Manos Apatolos of the University of Nicosia, okay, about, past research has shown that about half of single people are involuntarily single. In other words, they would like to have a partner, but they have trouble finding one. And they write, this is not entirely surprising. After all, finding a romantic partner requires a number of skills. People need to know how to flirt in order to attract prospective partners. They also need to have the ability to understand signals of interest, and put in sufficient amount of time and effort. Furthermore, for much of human history, mating practices were regulated, right? And with parents choosing spouses for their children, arranged marriages and such. This is no longer the case in most societies. Nonetheless, this transition has been a very recent one in elementary terms, the study says. And that means there's not yet been enough time for poor flirting skills, okay, to have been selected out. And that is largely because in the past, lacking that skill would not have impaired a person's chances of finding a partner. Apatolos' current study sets out to identify the main factors that predict involuntary singlehood. Specifically, he wanted to test the prediction that poor flirting skills, and I think Andrew Cuomo should be aware of this, low ability in recognizing reciprocal flirting signs, a lack of effort, and a high degree of choosiness would correlate with a greater likelihood of being voluntarily single, and also with longer periods of singlehood. Now, for myself, I can say I'm very picky. Okay, big issue. Assessing flirting skills and the ability to recognize flirting signs. The participants in the study were 1,228 Greek-speaking men and women whose average age was about 30. This wasn't even Americans. The study included 711 women and 512 men. The author recruited most of them via social media sites, including Facebook and Instagram. I bet that was an interesting process. 48% of them were single, 38% in a relationship, 14% were married, 47% indicated they were single because they faced difficulties attracting a partner. About 30% said they were, quote, between relationships, unquote, and 23% said they preferred to be single. Apostolo assessed subjects' flirting skills, ability to read signals of interest, effort, and choosiness. To do so, he used self-reported surveys that he had, quote, designed and used in previous studies. And the result, not knowing how to flirt, is the most important reason why all they said choosiness was the main, followed close behind by effort, and men reported significantly more years of being single than women. And in terms of limitations, Apostolo pointed out that this study was based on self-reports. Okay, and says that this ends by saying, we follow that lower scorers in flirting capacity tend to perceive signals of interest and mating effort. We're more likely to be involuntarily single than in an intimate relationship, and more likely to experience longer spells of singlehood. It's fascinating. I would love to see this done, in the American context, to just flesh out exactly how we behave in America toward each other. I'm looking at some of the Reddit thoughts here, and a number of people are saying that they're generally incompetent about flirting. And he has one person said they had a friend compass, and there are a lot of quips, nothing really meaningful yet. There is one that says that they've learned that being honest helps. I fell in love at 17 with the same woman for the next 15 years. At 32, they went their separate ways. He didn't know how to date or flirt. He never needed to. He just hung out with his best friend all the time, who happened to be his wife. So when he was single again, he had a lot to learn. Instead of trying to make some game, he was just honest with people. He said, I was with the same person since I was 17, so I don't know how to flirt. Simple as that. No one cared. They either found it sweet and endearing or kind of put off by him having only one serious relationship, and they felt they couldn't, quote, contend with that, which is fine by the majority of group. He says, so if you can't flirt, just be open and be honest about it. Chances are they'll find it kind of cute. I think this needs to be done in America because we have report after report after report of misunderstandings or bad behavior in other cases, and it seems to be happening a great deal of the time. And so some people would choose to not even want to play the game. Something else that's happening in our society, I don't want to play the game, and I'm actually quite comfortable with running my company as I do, and so I'm better able to control the environment of who I work with, rather than, I'm just saying this bluntly, rather than wanting the danger of encountering somebody who's dishonest. And there's a lot of that. So but I find that I'm not the only one who thinks that. For the scores of people that have their own businesses now, they don't miss office politics at all. And they miss the banter in the company, right? But the negative that comes with it is office politics. And I'll just be honest with you. Today, you get some wacky people who have some psychological disorders they haven't worked out that happen to come into the workplace. And not all of them are people who are worker drones who may be there on a temporary job. Some of them are founders of the company. All right? So we've got to a society that's produced this relationship crisis like nobody's business. And then you have somebody that maybe doesn't want a certain person of a certain color or age or whatever. You've got all these isms that they carry around in their head, and they don't want to deal with that person or that person. And rather than just simply expressing their honest view, as bad as it sounds, they act it out in other ways against the other person. And the other person doesn't know, right? We have that a lot going on a lot in our society today in America. So it's it's not a good look overall for the society. And then people are telling you, and I talked to my mom about this, who's 86, because I'm helping her out here, about how people meet today online, which I'm not comfortable doing. And she says, no, that's not the way to do it. But everyone does. And they watch like the latest Bachelor, right? Oh, what a disaster that is. Oh my goodness. Aside from the fact that he's picking women that are too young, I think. It's like he's picked the young white girls who are like in their early 20s of eschewing women, many of I thought, why? Get a mature one, right? Um, so anyway, but the whole point is I think economically speaking, if the money situation were better for everybody, there would be fewer examples of discomfort, fewer examples of people, particularly women, who felt like they didn't have power. Power in this case means money, okay? Um, and the good news is that you do have more women business founders than ever, more examples of women who reached beyond the glass ceiling. But what we don't have, and I think this has to do with single parentage, we don't have built-in confidence. We have a lot of people who've come from single parent families. I'm from a single parent family, who you don't have the mother and the father that are there, the dad to talk to you about flirting. I think that's another big problem. I don't know if that's as true in Greece as it is in the United States, but a lot of folks do not know the joys of having a dad at home in the normal way. If I ever have the good fortune of being a husband and a father, I will be the dad that I didn't have. All right? And let's face it, those dads will teach you appropriately how to woo a woman. That's what dads are supposed to do. And the other part of this society is that's bothersome is you have people who seem like they're trying to attack heterosexual relationships. You know, I never thought I'd say that even 2 years ago, but I'll be 60 next year, and I'm at the point in my life where I have stopped. I have removed the rose-colored glasses about a lot of aspects of life that I've experienced. Even people, I'll say this bluntly, who I thought were friends 20, 25 years ago, who turned out to be really racist. You try to reconnect with them and you discover that they had racial boundary issues that I didn't want to see at the time, or I think more appropriately, I didn't know how to see and also didn't want to see, right? And there are friends of mine who died who, in getting reconnected with them before they died, I realized they're really great people, you know? And I'm talking about among those folks I knew who were white and know who are white. It's a jarring realization. It's. I cried once. Just very recently, I came to that realization about that. I thought, who did I pick out? You know, how did I come to know these folks? And it's the first time in my life I wish I had that kind of antenna, because I didn't want to be around all black folks. The reason is I felt as a teenager that I was limiting myself by being in the Black Student Union, okay? Also, I was made fun of. I was called someone who talks white. I was beaten up in Chicago for that because I didn't play basketball well. These are things I've talked about in my program before. I was ostracized. And so I quite literally, and I was growing up with my mom. She divorced my dad for reasons that, let me put it this way, had she not, I probably would have been dead, okay? So, and my mom, I thought, did the best she could do in raising me under some very trying circumstances. So, here's the catch: I'm not the only one who has that experience. Millions of us do, and we're alive and we're adults and we're single. Um, so it's and this not the culture doesn't seem to be doesn't want to embrace being a lover. You know what I mean? Um, it's very weird. It's very weird to have this society right now, like the way it is, such that someone will write a study that basically says, "Hey, the reason why you're single is because you don't know how to flirt." Maybe it's that we're afraid to flirt. I think it's really what it is. I think the society has made flirting a bad thing, and in the American context, and I think we need to take a hard look at how we've allowed society to evolve. You can evolve as a society, and the evolution doesn't necessarily have to be a good one. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com.